3, 2, 1. Shane Bond. Shane, how's your stay been here in Canada so far?
It's been good. I mean, it's a country that I've wanted to come to for a long time. Heard a lot of great things. Sort of came out of the blue, really, the chance to come here. So I think one of the things you'd like to do now as a coach in particular is to encourage guys to get out and enjoy foreign countries, particularly when you've gone through something like COVID. So I know sometimes as a player I was a bit of a hermit, even as a coach, but I've made much more of an effort to get out and about, and it's actually made the trips a lot more enjoyable. It's been really good.
Is this your first time in this part of the world, North America? Or?
No, I like the US. I've been to the US quite a bit, but yeah, not over the border. So I'm the nub about having a stopover in Vancouver a few years ago on the way to Europe. Just didn't quite work out with the flight. So to get to come here, and just to do things like Niagara Falls was pretty cool. My sister's done it before. And I'm a big baseball fan, so the night with the Blue Jays the other day was epic. So that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, we saw Niall's story as well. He was there as well. He was having a blast. Vancouver is a completely different vibe from Toronto. Like Toronto's like metropolitan industrial even, and Vancouver is like the city in the middle of like mountains and all that. It's a completely different vibe, even though it's the same country.
Yeah, flying over Vancouver, obviously got to look. It was coming over around midday, and it was beautiful. And I've had friends who at home are big skiers and have done Whistler and gone up there and talked a lot about that, and spoke, of the summer's great place to go hiking. And my wife and I have done a few cruises with friends, and Alaska was one of those ones that we've spoken about, which often comes out of Vancouver. So,
did you go to Alaska during a time where it's like really long days?
The night, it's like home really when you're the same thing. In the summer the nights are long, and that's cool. You make the most of it. So I think Vancouver had that New Zealand feel, flying over sort of a Queenstown
That's what
feel,
everybody keeps saying.
Yeah,
that Lord of the Rings type feel.
It did. Yeah, it looked pretty epic. So, no, I love travel. I'm lucky that I get to do it for my job. Is here this time it's almost like, well, you hope you come back, so you don't want to do everything in case your wife comes back, so you can do some stuff together. So, if I'm lucky enough to come back, I'll probably bring her over next time.
Yeah, she'll love it.
So when I think of Shane Bond, I think of the two parts of your life. So Shane Bond, the player, then Shane Bond, the coach. Just rewinding a bit on your origin story of how you became a cricketer, how you got into cricket, and fastballing in general. Do you mind just explaining?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how I got into it. I was sort of 6 years old when I started at my local cricket club. I mean, there's only 2 TV channels on it back at home, and one day cricket was sort of, burgeoning this New Zealand-Australia rivalry. It's 6 years old, was 81, which is around the underarm time, so it was getting big coverage, and I used to love watching the games in Australia, with the big crowds at the MCG, SCG. Saw it, instantly wanted to do it. I was a bit hyper as a child, so my mum said she thought she couldn't believe the most crazy child would take on the most boring game, but she said I could always just bowl. It just sort of came naturally to me. So I played, like most Kiwis do, a winter sport, summer sport. I played football and then rugby as I got older, but cricket was always my love, and I just went down to the club and I just loved it, and I've been lucky enough it's been part of my life for the.
Did you know you were quick from the beginning? Because you're not quick, you're express. Did you know you were a side apart from everybody else?
No, I mean, because, at 6 you just can't tell. All you know is that it comes naturally. That's what my mum said. It just came naturally. So, it's like my son. He bowls like I do, exactly the same pretty much, and it just comes naturally for him. And so what do I look for in someone like him? He's like me, late developer. I was 16 till I started to grow, and then I had another growth spurt at 18. So around 18, then for my age, I was starting to be quick. Then, of course, you go into men's cricket where I was medium pace, and it was only, till I really got to 24, 25 that I took it up a notch to where I was. So that was half probably attitude, like the attitude to run in and bowl, and obviously just some physical development that it was late. So that's what I look at with him now is bowls like me, similar mechanics. Will he get there? Don't know in terms of pace, but yeah, I was lucky. I ended up in a sort of a band where not many sat, which gave me opportunities some others don't get.
Well, your son having you as his dad is sort of a cheat code.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I do most of the training I do, or coaching I do with him is around batting. Funny enough, which I really enjoy. He's a way better batter than I was, so he's talented. So it's quite exciting, having gone through the whole process of, my childhood career and then high school where I had a great time, and then walking away really to be a policeman because I never thought I'd make it, to coming back because I loved it, playing first class cricket, then getting the chance to play for New Zealand. All you're trying to do is, my son loves it. He wants to be a professional cricketer. and you're just trying to help them and fast track them along the way and
Yeah.
give them a kick in the bum sometimes because I was
sure.
lazy. And I'm saying, if you want to make it, these days you have to train hard. And yeah, so that's what I'm trying to do.
One thing I've noticed is a lot of people from like your batch, your era, have sort of moved over to punditry. And even though you kind of have an Instagram, but because I was trying to look for him yesterday and I couldn't find you. And then like after the GT20, I found your account, which has about 4,000 odd followers, but you don't post at all. And I feel like that's the advantage that the 90s and aughts generation had over the current cricketers, is that when we are on like social media, you guys were in the nets bowling hard. Do you feel like that's the difference between the generation that you grew up with and with your sons?
Maybe it's the fact that off the field you could get away with a little bit more.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, I just it's an interesting one, the social media. I've got 3 kids, and they're all on it, as most teenagers these days are. So really, I'm on there to monitor them.
For sure.
I actually went off Facebook at home until the earthquake hit at home, Christchurch, and flattened my hometown. And really, it was going back on there to stay connected because there was a lot of people in my town who I didn't know what had happened to them.
Yeah.
And so it was reconnecting just to make sure people were safe. So I don't post anything. I just follow a little bit of news items about what we do. Maybe you consider me behind the times, but I just don't have the energy. And I like that sort of the privacy sense as well. You get people will message you through different sites and stuff, and now and again I'll go back to them, but not often.
All right.
We definitely got to mute that.
Is that the cricket? Are we watching the cricket there,
That's
Southee?
shit from you.
That's at the
Nice work. Yeah. So we were, yeah, social media. So no, like I think for the guys about punditry, yeah, I've done a little bit of commentary. I think once I finished playing, I went back to university. I did a little bit of coaching because I knew that was my career path, but you've obviously got to make it income. And I wanted to see what it was like to commentate because you obviously, it's a skill in itself when you deal with broadcasters. So what sits behind what's going on? And I've really enjoyed it, and it's quite nice to do something different in between. And I still did some commentary over the summer and really enjoyed it. And I suppose there's only, from all the guys who I play with, there's only limited numbers get the chance to do it. So if you get the chance, you sort of get in there and give it a go anyway.
Is commentary as easy as it looks? Like you're talking about a game that you've played all your life, but I have heard from other commentators that there's early call times, you're talking about cricket all the time, your passion becomes your work. So is it tough being a commentator?
It's not that, like, they're talking about stuff and the actual work itself. No, it doesn't sometimes feel like work. What's challenging is articulating yourself on TV in a short period of time, because you have a director talking in your ear, telling you where ads are going on. You've got to know what to say and when to say it in a concise manner that people get, and you're working alongside someone else. And then it's obviously calling the game as well. So there's sort of calling in colour, as they say at home. Calling is the person who's talking about the game as it's live, and the colour's just adding the comments.
Yep.
And I'm not experienced enough to be calling yet. I'm adding the colour and the adding the little bits and pieces to it. And the people who do call, because commentators are like players, there's love-hate sometimes, but it's a real skill, and it's only until you get into that hot seat that you realise actually this is really hard.
Yeah.
And the people who do it well are very skilled at what they do, and so you learn to appreciate that.
We did a live stream once of the Pakistan-India game of the 2021 T20 World Cup, and we felt the heat. There are like moments where like there's nothing happening, but you still have to keep going. You can't have dead air on cricket, and it was like, how do these people do it?
Yeah, we're lucky in TV because I've done radio and TV, and TV's good because you can sort of sit in silence because the pitches. But I know that, you have radio where you can't. There is no silent time, and you could. And I know that people have gone on tour. New Zealand have toured. They've sent someone on radio, and it's just one person. So for 6 hours of the day, they've got to talk constantly, which that's a real skill. So I don't envy that side of things, but yeah, it is a really good and fun thing to do. And I was like a player, when I was playing at the top level, you're coming up against these people like Ricky Ponting and the Brian Laras, the Tendulkars, and getting the chance to play at them. I found a little bit the same with commentating. You're sitting in the chair next to Ian Smith or Ravi Shah. You're like, whoa, this is epic, So I better not screw this up. So yeah, that was cool.
Were there any commentators that you liked who would commentate when you were bowling? Like if you ever look back at any of your games?
Oh, look, I think I remember going to the VB series when I was, which I don't know if you say Booze Company, but back in the day, 2002, which was my first one-day series. I mean, I grew up watching the World Series, which was the Tri-Series stuff in Australia, coloured clothing, huge crowds. And so to get to go and play that was just epic, and that was the crew of Benno and Tony Gregg and Bill Laurie and Ian Chappell. It's that famous commentary team were commentating on the games, and we were sort of mingling with them after the games. And Richie would have a word, and I was like, "This is awesome," They're actually commentating on my game. So yeah, it's pretty cool. And as I said, when you've got guys like Ian Smith, who's iconic in New Zealand, Ian Bishop's great, and Ravi Shastri's awesome. And so to have a chance to sit in the seat next to them and just watch them go about their work, it's pretty cool.
You mentioned like playing against Australia, and Australia was one of your childhood dreams while you were watching the game on TV, and to eventually live that dream. Was it exactly what you thought it would be, or was the goal sort of shifted towards the next thing up in the mountain?
No, it was everything you hoped it would be, and more probably. The adrenaline. I remember obviously the huge crowds. There's a love-hate relationship with hate generally in sport. So it's just constant abuse from the fans, which was fun because I'd been a police officer, so I was used to copying a little bit of stick.
Yeah.
So it didn't bother me. To me, all of that stuff was just a few yarns I could tell my mates when I got home. Oh, these people said this, and this is what happened, and they all loved that. But the energy and the atmosphere. Obviously, we were playing a great team. We were beating Australia in Australia, which made it unbelievably fun. And I remember coming home from games and just the adrenaline rush was so great. You just couldn't sleep till all hours of the morning because you're so pumped up. So everything that I hoped it would be, it was, and more. So I'm very lucky to have that, with sport, to get that huge rush, especially when you're being successful. It was pretty amazing.
The 2003 World Cup is something that keeps standing out for us. It was probably the World Cup of express pace. We had the likes of yourselves, Shoaib Akhtar, Brett Lee, and it felt like all three of you guys were trying to hit that one common target of 100 miles per hour.
Yeah.
And it was like, who's going to break it first? I would love to hear your thoughts on that specific World Cup. I don't think we've seen the likes of that since then, because express pace has sort of shifted into other things now. But you yourself, Brett Lee and Shoaib Akhtar, trying to get the 100 mile mark, and it was just like one of those things. As we look back, we were young, but we could remember that adrenaline seeping through the pitches. How was that for you when you were in the moment?
It was pretty cool. There's still fast bowlers around. Lockie Ferguson, Mark Wood, those guys are around the same pace bracket. They're generally fast. I think it was cool being with obviously Shoaib and Brett. And look, those two were a yard on me. I mean, they cracked that barrier. Sean Tate, he was around that time. So there was a few of us. And I suppose it's like anything, even with, like, you look at the Federer, Nadal, the Djokovic thing, when there's a few guys going at it and they're amongst different teams, it adds an element of excitement. It wasn't exciting to face. I didn't face Shoaib, thank God. I played against him, but I faced Brett, and it was frightening. So, but for me, what it was like is, okay, this is sort of what it's like to face my pace, and this isn't much chop. I didn't really enjoy it.
So now you have some
perspective, because you do wonder. I mean, in my first Test match against Australia was the first time I'd seen myself on the radar gun. I had no idea how fast I bowled. And so, honestly, for the first 3 months that I toured Australia, my goal was just to keep bowling faster and faster. And I remember the first test was like 141, and the next game 143. And I remember getting to Adelaide about a month and a half later, and I cracked 150. And it was a big deal at home because people didn't see that sort of pace. And then it was just slowly eking up from here. And that World Cup, I bowled quick. There was especially the day against India where I reached my peak. I bowled fast that day. So yeah, it was fun. I really enjoyed watching those guys. I feel like I played in an era where there was a lot of great players.
Absolutely.
With the Laras, the Tendulkars, the whole Australian team, the Callises, all these players who you got to come up against and compete. And the fast bowling was one of those aspects. Like Wasim was still playing then. Waqar were at that World Cup in 03. Yeah. Didn't get to play Pakistan. So they're some of the things that you go, I wish I'd had the chance to go up and play them, even though we were playing at the same time. But it was a fun time to be playing.
You mentioned you first clocked in 141 on the radar gun, and then eventually you clocked upwards to 156.4. Is there specific training or a diet that you had to increase your pace, or was that just natural?
No, it wasn't really. The irony was I was a part-time cricketer. When I came back, I was a full-time policeman working 10-hour shifts and trying to find time to train on the end. So professional athlete's just not what I was. When you go I go from being a policeman who's a part-time cricketer to facing, arguably the greatest team of all time, and that Australian team with that list 100%. That they had. It's like I'm a little bit out of my depth here. And I think I got 3 wickets at 100 in that series, but I didn't feel out of my depth. I still felt like I could trouble those players, got a couple of wickets, then came back for the one-day series and had an amazing series. Everything went well for me. So then I sort of go, well, geez, if I'm only a part-time cricketer, imagine what I could achieve if I'm a full-time cricketer. And that's Chris Kens gave me the piece of advice, because he asked me, what do you want to achieve? And I was like, I just want to survive. I just play one test at a time. And he's like, nah, that's bollocks. Set your goal to be the best bowler in New Zealand, and if you can do that, try and be the best bowler in the world. And I hadn't really thought about it. So refocused after that series in Australia, where I got my confidence up and went, how am I going to do that? So I just then set about a plan to be the best bowler in the world. That was my goal. And I worked really hard, had a lot of injuries, but I worked really hard. And I think I got to 1 in one-day cricket and maybe 3 in test matches, but was really determined. And I suppose through the whole difference was that all the work I did gave me a huge amount of confidence when I played that I was ready. So the success wasn't a surprise to me. I expected to succeed because of how hard I was working.
What does hard work entail? Like, what is a day in the life of when you were working really hard? Like, what were you doing in the morning, eating and stuff? Yeah,
I think I just sat down and had a long, hard look in the mirror and went, well, I was really lazy when I was younger, and I don't have a big engine, so I'm not it's not like I'm a guy who can go out and run 4-minute Ks for 10 Ks. Mm-hmm. I don't like running, and I find it really hard. So I felt like I had to train my cardio to be able to last for a long period of time. Not only that, but do obviously the short stuff. So the foundation of my training ended up being boxing, so skipping and punching and a lot of body weight stuff, and I do that 4 to 5 times a week.
That would strengthen your core, essentially?
Yeah, all that stuff. So core, just like the physicality of getting up and down and using my whole body, because fast bowling is like that. So I'd do that 4 or 5 times a week. I'd run 3-4 times a week. I'd do weights 3 times a week. So it was like I treated it like a day of test cricket. I'd get up in the morning, I'd train, I'd eat, I'd train, I'd eat, I'd train, boom, boom, boom. And then within that, you'd have your recovery, your massage, and then Sunday would be my day off. And and then in the end, when I found humidity in hot countries really tough, so I'd go and do Bikram yoga, I'd train yoga in the heat. So I'd always adjust my program to make little improvements. So I'd have someone who I'd sit down with and go through my program, and they would ask me questions about it and hold me accountable to it, and then away I'd go. And
because, like you're saying, like that's what you were doing about 20 years ago. And modern day cricket has sort of evolved so much, where we have players like Virat Kohli who have their own personal trainers, and they don't askew from that schedule at all, because the game has like sort of evolved in such a quick way that you like you said yourself, you were a part-time police officer and then you're also playing cricket. I don't think, is that even viable in this day and age?
I don't think so. I think it's more likely to happen in a country like New Zealand than anywhere else. I think that like you just talked about, I know guys in the IPL this year had their own chefs. A couple of the guys were carrying them around, so all the food was being cooked up. There's GPS which would have been great in my day, because it was telling me how much effort I'm putting in. Am I overtraining, undertraining? What's the key? There's all that sort of stuff and technology available. The guys lift more weights over the course of the year. It's one thing I didn't do, and you look back and go, that mentality probably would have been a good thing for me. But it's just then impacts on your coaching and what that looks like in your coaching as well. So. Yeah, I mean, all I know is when people go, "Oh, do you have any regrets in your finishes?" No, I gave it everything I possibly had. Got hurt a bit, probably overachieved on the field, and it was a heap of fun, so it's okay. Yeah.
The one thing that we've noticed, because he's a huge Shoaib Akhtar fan, he'll tell you all about it. But we've noticed that something similar with your career arc and his is that these fast express pace bowlers, there's a lot of wear and tear going on. It almost feels like the vessel can't contain the power that you guys are trying to produce. It almost feels like that. So how does that happen, firstly? And secondly, looking back, was there anything that you could have done to sort of mediate that, or was it just always going to happen, the injuries and this stuff?
I think that's why I'm like I talked about my son before. If I'd actually worked harder when I was younger and stayed on the field for longer, I think you get a bit more of a base, and when you've got a base, you can build some durability around that. I'm going to look at the guys like Tim Southee's sitting over there, and Trent Boult, and these guys who are really great runners. The Andersons, the Staines, guys who run well tend to probably be a little bit more durable as well. And I was never a great runner, so perhaps that didn't help. I think, when you look back and you go, I just looked at it and people said, well, you could have slowed down and just held back a bit. I was like, well, it's not really my role in the team. My role was to be X factor, was to intimidate, was to bowl fast. And I got wickets. Like that's what I did. I got wickets and I got people out. And I just figured that if I was getting people out, then the team was going to be successful. So that was my role within the team. Probably like Shoaib's was no different. His job was to come in and scare the hell out of people. And when he got it right, like I did, you could run through a team and knock a team over.
Yeah.
And that's of real value, particularly when you get into World Cups and big tournaments. If you can knock a team over, it can be the difference between finals, etc. So, no, I never really considered it because I was very competitive and I just loved the feeling of bowling quick.
Yeah.
So, and you picked and choose your times when I was coming back from injury or if you're playing first class cricket sometimes. But when I was playing for New Zealand, I was all guns blazing.
What made you transition your career into coaching? I mean, I know you love the game, but what made you sort of decide that that's what I want to go?
I always loved watching cricket. I think it was a natural fit. I mean, policeman, you're sort of about helping people. And from the age of 6, I just watched every game of cricket that was on TV. And even in my holidays, the test matches were on in Australia from 1 o'clock till 7. I'd watch the entire day, every day. And even with ODIs, I don't do it now, to be fair. I can't sit and watch ODIs all day, no chance. But I liked it, and I liked analysing it and watching it and seeing how batsmen done. So, and I still love doing that about the game, watching the games that I'm involved in, watching what's happening, analysing batsmen, where's the game moving, where are the trends going. The analytical side I love. And so it's a natural fit coaching, and I like being around the guys and trying to help out from your own experiences, but just trying to get the best out of those people. And when you're doing that, you're enjoying their success as well. It's a fun environment to be around when you're seeing people who you like have success and you're still experiencing all the cool stuff that you did as a player when you're winning without the stress of playing, which is great.
Yeah. 2015, you worked with MI, you worked with Bumrah at MI. What are you coaching someone like a Jasprit during the middle of an IPL? Are you just doing small tweaks, or are you just boosting his confidence? Because you can't really work on technical stuff in a 2-month tournament.
You can. There's always little tweaks you can make. I think that's one of the probably the misnomers of cricket is there's the technical time and then there's the not. I think you can always make tweaks. I think baseball's a classic example where the seasons are so long and busy. You just have to do that. You can't wait 6 months to make a change if you think that there's a change necessary. Now, you're not doing massive overhauls about it, but you're looking at subtle adjustments of run-ups and where they're landing, and are they landing in the same position on the crease? They're the little things that actually can have a knock-on effect. So you're just watching for subtle things like that, and then around that, then you're finding ways to improve his bowling. You go bowlers and successful bowlers will sometimes operate in the square, and you're just trying to push the boundaries out. Have you considered trying this? Where are the opportunities for you to get better? And that's my job, I think, as a coach. My first job is to make players better. Now, Bumrah's an unbelievable bowler, but I'm going, well, what about your slow ball? What about your bouncer? How are you using it? When should you be using it? Are you using it enough? Probing with questions to just expand his mind and his game, and that's fun. When you get a player like him of his quality, and he trusts you enough to try some of that stuff, and it's successful, then that forges something pretty cool. So. Yeah, it's been nice to have the opportunity to work with some great bowlers, the Bumrahs, the Malingas, the Mitchell Johnsons, the Tim Southees, the Trent Boults, these guys for a long period of time and have that relationship. It's cool.
How hard is it to coach him? Because you guys are like buddies, right? And then let's say you have...
You guys played together.
He's a pain in the ass. His nickname's Pest. We played with each other.
Yeah.
So we roomed with each other on a New Zealand A tour, I think, back in 2009. So that was the first time we'd met.
He was probably a rookie.
Yeah, he was a proper rookie. And then we played, and he was a rookie in 2009-10. We played ODIs and T20 cricket together. So we were teammates, and he was 19 or 20 in Raw. When I came back into the New Zealand team, he was just about to hit his peak. I got good timing with Tim and Trent.
Yeah.
They were just on the up and came in and got to work with them for 3 years. And it was just fantastic.
Yeah.
They were brilliant and still are. And to still, Trent with MI and then Tim now in Canada, still work with them a little bit back at home and have such a strong relationship with them. They're just awesome guys, and what they've achieved is sensational. They're two of New Zealand's great bowlers. 100%. So to watch them have that success, which the credit goes to them, but have perhaps some small role in helping them out, it's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I think Southee and Boult will definitely go down as one of the great fast bowling partnerships.
Mate, they're unbelievable.
In cricket. Yeah.
How hard is it to leave the game behind? Because we were just in sort of... The cricketing world is sort of in awe of what Stuart Broad has just done, right? 604 test wickets. He's sort of said goodbye to the game. But, you can take the fast bowler out of the game, but you can't take the game out of the fast bowler, right? I mean, you were a great example of it. There's no way you can keep you away from cricket. How does one say goodbye to that phase of the life where you're like, okay, I'm no longer playing anymore. I used to be an express pace bowler, right? I will now move on to other things. How
Time to hang the
difficult?
boots.
It was
Yeah.
easy, actually. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was easy. You know, like obviously, I was lucky. I worked with Jimmy and Stu in an Ashes series, so I did an Ashes, which was pretty cool for
Yeah.
a couple of tests. I just knew, like, it was funny. I just had this inkling that obviously, you know, you're working so hard for a period of time that there's just a point where you just go, I've just had enough, and you do. I recognise that for me, I could still bowl quick when I finished it just before I was 35, but my motivation to train was starting to waver. And I thought, well, if it's starting to waver, then I must be getting due the end. And there was a point where I just played a game. I was at the T20 World Cup final. I've been thinking about it. I thought, I'm just done. I'm done here. And I remember there was a we were playing in, I think we were playing England in the West Indies, and that was the last ball in my spell, and I just turned to Dan Vittoria and said, "This is it. It's all over." And
Very similar to Broad. He just comes up on a fourth day.
I just knew and bowled the ball, and he, you know, we had a World Cup that was about 10 months away, and I think we were touring India and Bangladesh, and there were some tough tours coming up, and I said, I just don't have it in me to do the training required for me to be as good as I want to be, because I could still play, but I'm not going to be at the level that I want to be. And I think when you're a bowler, I don't miss bowling. People go, "Oh, do you miss it?" No, not at all. I never missed playing. I've come back and played a game in New Zealand, a couple of charity games, and I went on a Masters series and
You were
played.
still clocking 140 back then, actually. I just saw.
Yeah, I know. And I went to the road safety series last year in India, and it's still quite fun to bowl. But I can't say I enjoy it. It's physically, you wonder how you did it. That's how demanding it is. I'm old now, but it's bloody demanding on the body.
Tell them the stat about the crash.
Which crash?
The every time you bowl, it's like getting hit by a car. Or something?
Yeah, it's like almost being
No,
involved
we don't
in
know
a-
if this is true. We just
Yeah,
read it
yeah,
on
yeah.
the
mini
internet.
car accident, because
Yeah.
the amount of load that goes on from your run up to your bowling action and then onto your legs and your knees, it's really tough to imagine how a fast bowler sustained. And no wonder, you know, Brett Lee had ankle issues, Shoaib Akhtar had knee issues, and you
issues.
had a lot of back issues. Are you pain free now? Like, is everything fine?
Yeah, I had back surgery, but everything's, touch wood, is okay. Like I've had an Achilles tendonitis because I was trying to run, and I've sort of started to give up on the running now and trying to do other trainings. But no, physically I'm really good. I mean, you hear guys have knee replacements and hip replacements. I'm nowhere near that. My back, even though I had surgery on my back, my surgeon said, you would never know you're a cricketer. It was in pristine condition apart from the one vertebra that kept cracking. So I'm lucky there. I think, you know, as a player, that's, you know, obviously you just talked about Stuart Broad. When you look at what Stuart and Jimmy have done and played, the amount of cricket that they have, I mean, 160 test matches plus, that's without all the other first-class cricket and the trainings on top of that. Those guys are just remarkable. You know, you can only but admire them. And same as Trent and Tim, you know, the amount of stuff that they've played. And I think with cricket and fast bowling, it's just one of those things. Some people just handle it better because it's just, as you said, those forces, just some people handle it better than others. That's just the way it goes. So all you can do is train and try and prepare as well as you can, and then shit happens sometimes. You know, you just get injured, and that's the way you got to look at it.
Yeah.
It's not meant to be, and you know, people get stuck into you for being injury prone, and that's like, well, all I can do is work as hard as I can and prepare as well as I can. If I get injured, well, it's just what happens.
You mentioned working with Stuart Broad, Jimmy Anderson, Tim Southee, who's here, Trent Boult. These guys have extreme longevity and consistency with their careers. Did you find any common traits between all four of them that you think, okay, no, that's what I think is what makes them great fast bowlers?
No, I think their work ethic, there's no doubt about that. You know, and speaking to Jimmy, he talks about he likes running. I know Tim does, Trent does. I think Stu's a good runner. They obviously started early, so they probably came in when the game had been professional, I reckon, for about 5 years. It was really an amateur game, and when I started playing for New Zealand, it turned professional, and we went on strike, and then all of a sudden we earned a living that I could move out of the police and then you were sort of learning what it was like to be a professional. When Tim sort of came into the team in, I think, 08 and 09, the game had been professional, so stuff was more improved, and it's got better and better. But you know, like, he's a fit, durable guy, you know, and that's just the way it goes. But that's a credit to the work. I know the work that they put in consistently. I think when I played, it was probably train and then start playing and not keep that training up in season. Like you talked about technical changes, sometimes you just rested. Whereas these guys now, they day off, he's in the gym. You know, he's 34, 35, played, but he's training. He's keeping on top of it. He wants to keep going. He's still motivated. Same as Stu and Jimmy, and that's, It's the desire to keep getting better and just doing those little things every day in the background that makes them, as good as they are.
Jimmy Anderson's career arc is just unheard of. Like at 41,
Man, he's still bowling 135.
That's
He's
what I was
genius,
saying.
yeah.
And
It's
he just said
crazy.
he wants to keep going.
Yeah,
He loves that, and I think that's the thing is people go, "Oh, you're too old, retire." Well, it's the one he's probably like me. He started probably when he was 6. It's the one decision you get to make in your own time. If you want to retire at 25, retire. But he's played long enough. He's earned the right to go out when he wants to go out, and he shouldn't have to go out because of some swan song or people think it's the right time. He'll go out when he knows he's had enough. And if he's fit and he still can bowl, and there's no doubt about that, and he still loves it and wants to play, well, I think he should be able to do that.
And whenever he goes out, he has a great career in podcasting because his podcast is amazing.
Yeah. I
He's
mean,
really
he's a dry guy, Jimmy, having worked with him. But I really enjoyed his dry sense of humour, and he's a big football fan. And
Yeah.
he's transition. No, that's part of the transition out. You start to look at he's a realist. He'll know that there's stuff that he'll want to do outside of cricket, whether that be, I don't know if commentary is his thing, but maybe it's podcast. But he'll probably be Sir Jimmy Anderson at some point in time.
100%.
He'll give after dinner speeches and in England make a heap of money. Good on him.
One thing we discussed outside right before we were when we set this up was you were giving a very important, passionate talk about just amongst us about the infrastructure that the Canadian cricket needs to be better. Toronto's population is at 3.5 million, which is more than half of New Zealand's.
Yep.
Which is insane to me because New Zealand produces such amazing cricketers. There's a two-parter. Firstly, how?
Yep.
And secondly, how can then Canada learn from the New Zealand cricket structure and sort of build it up? Because we have the amenities. It's just something, the direction is, I feel like, what's missing. Eh?
Yeah, that's a good question. I look back at, like I just spoke about before, about the time we went on strike to become paid professionals. So you could say, we'll just pay players more money and that's going to make life better. It will to a point, but one of the big things that our Players Association did at home was put warrant of fitness on grounds.
Yeah.
So there was an expectation around pitch conditions and training conditions. Now, if you get your players to play on, and New Zealand is limited by weather, much like it is over here. Winters you can't train. We have these now big marquee things that we train on grass wickets, but they're in marquees, and they've just been brought in over the last couple of years. So, all year round you can sort of train on grass. But up until that point, we couldn't. Yeah, we were still as competitive as some of the teams like in Australia and India, you can train all year round on grass. We were still good. So I think getting those grass facilities is key. Good pitches for the players to play on. Some good grass wickets for the players to train on. There's some good indoor facilities here in Toronto that we've experienced so far. But if the players can be playing on good wickets, your batters are going to get better. Your bowlers are going to get better because they have to be more accurate, and so your cricket will lift. So for me, it's about Cricket Canada either looking at anyone from England, Australia, but good grounds people, bring them over, educate those people, get the pitches right, and get enough of those pitches to be right that, whatever it's called, club cricket or state cricket or provincial cricket here, the best players in Canada can play on good wickets week in and week out. And I think if you do that, you'll see a real lift. I think I'm hearing the players are going on to contracts now because there's ODI status back in. And I think that's the beauty of the global T20 is you've seen some of the Canadian players really stand up. There's enough talent here. They don't have huge depths of talent, but there's enough talent. But if you get the facilities right and the national team goes right, that talent, like New Zealand's, has increased over time.
Yeah.
It was much like us. The depth of New Zealand cricket now is far better. And we're going to have challenges in the recent, when all our great players of this generation sort of filter out. Our depth is going to be challenged again, but it takes time. But if you've got some good players and people are encouraged to play, and there's a big community of cricket lovers here, then who knows? Canada can crack it, and then you never know. And look at a team like Afghanistan,
Exactly.
how competitive they are in a very short space of time, and that's pretty cool.
A lot of the modern cricketers, like we were talking to Harsh Thakra yesterday on our podcast, and he still has a day job, much like yourself back in the day. How does a cricketer transition from A, making an earning, and then B, playing the game as much as he wants?
I mean, that's the thing. It's always a challenge. And look, who knows whether if the Canadian players are going to get paid in the short term enough to be full-time cricketers. But I'm the classic example to show that you can do it. There are plenty of people out there in other sports, and I'm talking sports like triathlon, who train huge amounts for no money because that's what they want to do. So a lot of Olympians don't make a lot of money, but they train their ass off because they want to achieve a goal. So in the end, it'll come down to how bad do you want it. regardless of the money. If you want it bad enough, you'll work.
Yeah.
And then you might. And the beauty of T20 cricket now, it's opening up earning opportunities for players, the Canadian players here, but also obviously there's all these other competitions around the world. Now, if you come into this competition and play well, who's to say you won't find yourself at 2 or 3 other competitions, making a nice living for yourself while still playing for your country. So that's the importance, I think, too, of getting the wickets right here, because if you can show you're successful on good wickets with bat or ball, then you can take that into another competition and you get some cricket. So that's an exciting time, cricket, with all the stuff that's going on. Exciting time for a player because you make a heap of dough. But that's also these competitions are including associate countries, having criteria to play them. And I think that's a really good thing.
Yep.
You mentioned not really having too much of an interest in ODI cricket. There's a World Cup coming up, but I think generally the interest is going down for ODI cricket. T20s is sort of skyrocketing. What do you think is the future of ODI cricket after the World Cup?
I think both ODI and Test cricket are in trouble. To be fair, I think, I like ODI cricket. I just won't watch all day, 7 hours. I just got better things to do, and I think that's the general trend of society. Society's busier, more people have to work more. There's so many more options on the table, and I think we're talking about baseball the other game, and it was a noticeable difference for me who's been to a few baseball games with the game clock on, how much quicker the game was. It used to drag. It certainly didn't feel like it dragged, and there's a reason why they've brought that up, is people just have got better things to do. They want to sit there for 5 hours, but they'll sit there for 3. And that's why people love T20. It's short, it's sharp. You don't know who's going to win. And the longer the game gets in cricket, often the more one-sided it gets. And I think outside of probably the Ashes series, you're seeing that most teams in Test cricket, if they play at home, they win. There's a couple of competitive series, but all in all, it can be pretty boring. And I love Test cricket, and I still think it's the ultimate. But people don't want to watch boring stuff that takes 5 days. So, and ODI cricket can be a little bit like that as well. So I love the World Cups. The World Cups are cool. The T20 World Cup's sensational because it's 3 weeks. These so-called minor nations now are very competitive in tipping over countries, and I think there's good enough cricket amongst the countries like the Netherlands and Namibia that they can tip teams over, and so you go into a World Cup where everyone can beat everyone, and that's, to me, that's far more exciting. So when I look at the World Test Championship, I know we won it, and that was unbelievable.
Yeah, it was insane.
India's almost impossible to eat at home. Australia don't lose very often at home. You can sort of see the same 2 teams being there or thereabouts every couple of year cycles, and it's going to be boring. And so I think in the end, cricket will go down like every other major sport. It will be franchise based with sort of pockets for international cricket.
Sort of like how football is, right?
Like football. It'll be
League
like
and
that.
stuff,
It'll be you'll be playing all these, and maybe the IPL was the dominant, but there'll be all these leagues playing at different times, and in between you might be playing a Champions Trophy or a T20 World Cup or a marquee series like the Ashes. Or I think that's where it's going to end up.
But the purists would argue that, with the ODI cricket, the loss of the ODI cricket and the tests, they would say like that's the highest form of cricket, and the T20 just turns into like a slogfest. What do you say about that? Because players like Sachin and Brian Lara became Sachin and Brian Lara Ponting because they played long days and days of like ODI cricket and test match cricket. You think we're going to lose them?
I don't think you'll lose them. I don't think you'll lose them. I think you can't tell the next generation what they're going to love.
Okay.
Like it's all right for me and all the people of my generation and older that this is the way it's going to be. But my son loves cricket, but he don't want to sit down and watch Test cricket. He'll watch a couple of overs with me, but he's got no interest. Like he watches all the IPL highlights and the Big Bash highlights. That's what he wants to watch. It's exciting. It's big hits. It's big crowds. He don't want to sit and turn on a game with no crowd and it's boring and it's blocking. That's just the way it goes. So as much as the purists want something, they don't get to dictate it. The modern generation, it's like I don't want everyone on social media, but I can't tell my kids that's the way it rolls. So
fair enough.
And I think that's what you're going to get is, and that's what we saw with the clocks at the baseball is the demand for a faster game. And that's in the end, that's what will dictate is what the public want. And as the next generation come through, the IPL having experienced it is unbelievable competition. It's amazing. The atmosphere and the electricity and the level of cricket is next level. And that's what people want to watch, and they'd want to watch more of it. and it's fed by a market in India that just love it. So
They love it. They eat it up.
and they eat it up, and they eat these competitions up. And I love coming here for a short period of time, meeting all these new guys, playing in a competition that has a winner at the end of it, and it's fun, So rather than playing sort of a bilateral series and another one that has no relevance or meaning, it does when you come here and come together and you want to win a trophy. That's cool.
Absolutely, Shane. It's been a pleasure having you on. It's great to have you here in Canada on the podcast. I've had to tone down the fan inside of me to speak with you.
Yeah.
But you've been incredibly kind to speak with us, and it's been a pleasure and an honor.
No, thank you guys.
Thank you
It's always fun talking about cricket.
Yeah. So and next time we're in New Zealand, you gotta show us around because we've never
100%. Are you coming out, are you?
Yeah, he's trying to go out into Australia to do the Pakistan and Australia series. So
The Boxing Day test in Melbourne. So I'm thinking of might just swing down to Christchurch or Queenstown.
Do it. I'll be around.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much.
No worries. Thanks,
so
guys.
much.